Hey everyone, I'm proud to share with you the Blockcircle platform. So, the best way to describe it is it's a financial market intelligence and trading platform that allows you to research and find and trade and invest in any financial asset class across all possible markets. So, it allows you to execute trades on multiple accounts simultaneously. And you can see the live routing demonstration here where it allows you to execute a large scale trade like buying 25,000 worth of Apple shares across multiple sources of liquidity, across multiple exchanges or venues to settle and execute that trade. So that's particularly relevant when you're talking about smaller illiquid assets and also when you're trying to do large scale trading and investing. And really, currently there's about 8 modules. You can see that there's whale alpha, insider alpha, political alpha, prediction alpha, and then our asset outperformer engine, our momentum trading engine, our market reversal engine, and then our trade alpha. And really what we specialize in, as in my background, has been in financial engineering and data science. And I'm really happy with our universal routing and trading engine. So it's completely proprietary. There's nothing like it on the market. And I really would encourage you all to try it. So the best way to get started is to take a look at each of these engines one by one and to really just explain in simple terms what is the key benefit of using Blockcircle. So rather than trying to jump around and fumble around from application to application, and you're trying to figure out, oh, I need to use TradingView, then I need to use a Telegram trading bot, then I also need to bounce around and use a traditional brokerage account to buy stocks or buy ETFs or mutual funds or execute some foreign exchange type of trades, right? Or if you want to get some exposure to predictions and so forth, you really have to go and fumble around so many different platforms, and it's quite painful. So rather than doing that, you have one modal, one unified view, and one universal trading engine that you can do everything on. So it connects to more than 150 different exchanges and brokerage services, and you can execute trades on chain and off chain. So this is why it's my life's work. It's taken the team an enormous amount of time to get to where we are now, and I really believe you'll love it. You'll give it a try. So let's get started. So the first thing is the way that everything is split. It's split into 2 paths. So you have trade and then you have discover. So if you're ready to find trade opportunities today and you wanted to immediately start executing buys or sells or go long or shorts with leverage or without leverage, you would go into the trade tab. And there's 5 main modules in the trade tab itself, and we'll go through them. And then the other path is discover. So if you're looking more for research, learning, discovery, exploration, etc., that would be under the discover tab itself. And there's different modules for that. So let's go through trade. So the first thing is the trade alpha. So the way that everything is structured here is where I post all of my short-term, medium-term, and long-term trades that are being sourced from all of the different engines across the entire platform. So I source trades myself manually using my own system. So I have my own Sentinel that essentially is scanning the entirety of all of the assets universally, and then try to find assets using like the asset outperformer engine, where it's telling me which companies or projects are sustainably outperforming a benchmark of assets. And I'll go through that. So that's one source of trades I get. Another source of trades I get, and you'll see, is the momentum trading engine, right? So that is our own proprietary trading engine that originated in TradingView, and now we have it entirely on our own platform. And it has dozens of trading strategies that we're using. And those trading strategies, some are specific to stocks, some are specific to cryptocurrencies, some are specific to ETF, some are mutual funds, some are going to be FX. In the future, we'll have commodities, precious metals, etc. So that's another source. A third source that I use that I post trades from is the MRE. So that's the market reversal engine. It's one of my favorites. And so you'll see an example where the market is massively oversold on Solana, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and all altcoins, as an example. It's usually the four main conditions I need before I take a long. So when I see that the market reversal engine is producing those signals for me, I go long, right? So that's an example of when I take that trade, I post it here, and everyone will be able to take a look at it, to be able to follow it, to be able to see exactly what's available, and you'll be able to execute the trade as you'd like. And then we also have another setup here. So if you go to the first page, you'll be able to see all of the stocks right at the top. And let's say, for example, right now I'm in a long CRM, so Salesforce. And if you want to take that trade as well, you just click trade, and then it allows you to execute it itself. Now, if you don't want to manually execute these trades, you can immediately subscribe to something we created called Autopilot. So that essentially can fire off a buy or a sell or a long or a short exactly at the same time as I am. But the way that Blockcircle is set up is it's completely non-custodial. So we have no access or control over any of the user funds. We don't see the user funds. We have no purview or insight into the API keys or anything whatsoever. So it's completely protected in Google Cloud. So we don't we have complete we're in complete darkness essentially when it comes to that. So if you set up Autopilot as an example, what it'll do is it'll immediately show you different profiles that you could use to automatically execute and set up your conditions, your parameters. You're like, okay, I only want to go long when a trade of this size is executed. And I only want to put 1% of my portfolio size into this one trade, and only if ABC conditions are met. So you can be as sophisticated as you want, or you can keep it very simple and it just broadly have Autopilot set up. So think of Autopilot as you driving a car and you're on cruise control, where you can still intervene and you can control. And I would encourage you to control and intervene as needed, especially upon exits. So that's the trade alpha. And then the next module that I really want to go through is the whale alpha. So the whale alpha is across the entirety and the entire space of cryptocurrencies on chain. We've scanned all of the most profitable and most successful traders, investors, whales, institutional buyers, and core decision makers in the space that have sway and that have material influence over others. And we're looking at all of their spot trades, all of their perpetual futures trades, and we're then running it through extensive screening, and we're prioritizing which of those whales, or denominated, identified as whales or profitable traders, are worth looking at. And out of that, so what we've done here is just an example of a filter. We've essentially looked at only the wallets that have made at least 100,000, that have a minimum win rate of 80%, and have minimum trades of 10. You can set it to a more statistically significant size. Like you want to put it to 30 or 50, that's completely fine. But you adjust the filters as you best see fit. What I have found to be helpful as an initial starting point is to put 100,000, win rate 80, maybe put the trades at 20 if you want, or even 30 or 40. It depends on how rigorous you want to be in terms of your screening and scanning. And then what you'll see right now is there's still 1,000 whales that have met those filters. And then you can look at exactly who they are. So you can see exactly what chain they're executing trades on. So if it's a prediction alpha on Polymarket, for example, you'll be able to see it on prediction alpha, but that's considered a whale, like Dr. Pufferfish, who's made 6 million and he or she has a very high win rate. You can look at their Sharpe, their Sortino, their Kalmar ratio, so all those quantitative ratios to help you gauge their performance, which is also very difficult to get exactly right and to exactly accurate, especially with somebody who has a significant share of trades. And then what you do is you can go to their profiles, and you can see exactly how they've done, right? So you can see exactly how they've performed. and you see what their win rate is. You can see what their total volume traded. You can look at their overall performance from and look at their unrealized losses, unrealized gains, their open positions. You can see their current recent activity, and it just gives you the broad perspective of whether or not these are whales that are worth looking at. These are whales that are worth pursuing, and so forth. So the way that I'm using this is I'm basically looking for whales that meet my criteria, and I'm keeping a close eye, and I'm being alerted every single time they're making purchases with high conviction of significant size, and usually ones where they're making positions, they're creating positions that are considerably higher than their normal average conviction. So their average size of their position, let's say, is usually 200,000. If they're making a position higher than 200,000, I want to watch that whale. And it's very simple to watch the whale. You literally just go to their profile, you click alerts, and then you'll be able to immediately set up alerts for when you want to get alerted, right? And then if you click Autopilot, you can program it so it can go and systematically mirror what that whale is doing on chain, of course, right? So that's another example. Another one is prediction alpha. So we're looking at all of the prediction marketplaces across the entire space, and we are aggregating them, curating them together, and then trying to find any type of cross match. So that's a very important step 2. And then step 3 is we're taking our own proprietary model. So we've created multiple machine learning and AI models to be able to evaluate whether or not what the current market is pricing the yes or no probability is, whether or not that's accurate, right? So any type of mispricing, we outline that. So for example, will Uruguay win the 2026 FIFA World Cup? The market's pricing it at 1.1. We're pricing it closer to like 1.5. So it's fairly small difference, but you can see how other markets are also pricing it, and then you could also see exactly who's buying it. So that you have one whale who has 35,000 into this particular position, and then you can see their win rate in the category, etc. So those are just like small examples, right? Another example is, will Russia and Ukraine cease fire by June 30th? So I personally focus on using prediction alpha to gain a pretty significant competitive edge in terms of information asymmetry. So for me, what the prediction alpha engine is doing is when you click analyze, it'll go and run an in-depth scan to try to find any piece of information that is potentially beneficial or detrimental to the chance of there being a ceasefire in this particular market, as an example. And then it'll then run it through our own machine learning models to then produce a probability score. So it'll say, the market's pricing this as 100%. Blockcircle probabilities is much lower. Now, I have to see when this was last run, right? Because if we run this now, it might potentially be considerably higher. But when we last priced it, it was fairly low. And then you could take a look at exactly what the key factors are, the risk factors, the catalyst events, and then you can see exactly who the whales are. So right now, essentially all the whales are in no, which is interesting. And you can see exactly what their P&L is, again, their performance, et cetera. So usually I want to try to pay attention to whales who are fairly accurate over time. So this is prediction alpha. And then anytime you want to take the trade, you just click trade and you can immediately buy it on Polymarket or Kalshi. And you could do advanced trading as well, where you can do like a weighted average price where you could scale in, scale out, you can hedge, you can have bracket buying, you can dynamic cost average in, out, route trades to multiple wallets on chain if you want. But really it covers Polymarket, Kalshi, Manifold, Predicted, Metaculus, and also Opinion. So Opinion Trade is on Binance Smart Chain. And then Polymarket is, of course, on Polygon. And that's really prediction alpha. So hopefully that gives you a perspective into it. And the next one that I want to go through is the political alpha. So political alpha, the way that it's being done right now is We are literally scanning every single filing from every senator and congressman and congresswoman across the entire United States, and we're adding more countries as much as the data is available to us. And we're seeing whether or not they are adhering to the public stock filing requirement, which requires them to disclose their financial positions within 45 days of purchasing or selling or executing a particular trade. And it allows you to see that in full detail. So, for example, on May 14th, there was Edward Case, who's a Democrat in the House and doesn't have a particularly high win rate, but he's done 9 buys and 1 sell, and he was buying Apple. He didn't buy a huge amount, so he bought around somewhere between 1 and 15,000, but he only filed it today. So he filed it today. So this is where it gets interesting, right? So David Taylor is a Republican in the House who's done 197 trades, considerably higher win rate, and is compliant usually half the time. And I'll give you more details on that. But his delay was about 14 days from date of actual trade execution to date of filing. And if you want to take this trade, for example, and if you still feel like the price is around 397, then you can just trade and then you can immediately buy it. So this is where you can connect any exchange that you could possibly imagine. So right now I have Alpaca, I have Charles Schwab and TD Ameritrade connected. You can have so many other venues, so it's completely up to you. But the beauty of this and the way that it's set up through this unified universal trade engine is that it literally covers 150 plus exchanges or brokerage venues. So if you have an E-Trade account or a Webull or a TradeStation account, etc., all you would do is you would just click setup, and then click connect, and then you paste in your consumer key and your consumer secret. I don't see it again, so it's all completely protected by a Google Cloud KSM, so it's fully encrypted end to end. But again, this is the beauty, is that you can do smart routing and you can go and execute that same trade as a tokenized stock on chain if you want to, or if you want to execute that same trade for Google, as an example, you can go and buy that trade, go long or short, on E-Trade and Charles Schwab and Alpaca if you want. So it's completely up to you. So that literally the sky is the limit here. It's endless opportunity. And then there's so much more here. So you can do like a leaderboard. This is where it gets really fun. So you can look at the top stack ranked leaders, and you can say, okay, I want to compare Lisa McLean to Josh Gottheimer, and I also want to compare them to Daniel Goldman and Robert. So, and then what you do is click compare, and then it'll almost do like a fight card. So it'll do head to head. So like Lisa's been trading 1,400 times, estimated volume of 14 million. Alpha is whether or not she has sustainably outperformed the benchmark, which is usually Bitcoin, S&P 500, gold, and whether or not she's outperformed Warren Buffett, right? Because who doesn't want to outperform Warren Buffett? So Robert's actually the highest performer in terms of alpha, and he has the highest win rate, and he's 100% compliant, which is interesting. So that's definitely somebody I would be paying some close attention to. But then if you want to see who Robert is, you just click their profile, and then you'll be able to see exactly what I was just mentioning in terms of what their drawdown is, but also you can see how they're performing, right? So he's actually outperformed Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, Bitcoin, and S&P 500. This is where it gets really fun, because you can take a look at exactly how he's doing and then see his trading activities, sector allocations, and what his current portfolio is as last disclosed. And this is where it gets really fun, and you can just automatically trade what he's buying through the Autopilot program that we built that I was mentioning earlier. So that's really political alpha, and there's so much more. There's flock analysis. Like if you go to the intelligence tab and go to flock signals, you could see whether or not there's any potential indication of suspicious insider trading, or whether or not there's people in cahoots, or there's coordinated, concerted efforts to be buying or selling particular stocks, or there's clearly some kind of pattern here where all of them are buying Broadcom within like a few weeks of each other, or maybe not. I mean, I don't know if it's a conflict of interest or whether or not there's communication between them, or it's completely clean. It's hard to say, but the flock signal allows you to identify that. And then there's shadow trading, there's bipartisan tracking, there's you can look at committee sector analysis to try to see the cross section, whether or not a Republican or a Democrat or a congressperson is part of an established committee, and they are positioning themselves in an advantageous way to go and buy or sell a particular stock that's tied to their particular party or tied to their particular committee. So this is where it gets interesting. And then there's heat maps where you can look at it by sector, you can look at clusters. Compliance is the part where you see how late people usually are. And usually it's a penalty of $200 after you surpassed a 45-minute delay. So hopefully this makes sense. So political alpha is extremely powerful. And then the next one is insider alpha. So insider alpha is looking at right now the Form 4 that's filed with the SEC. So for any publicly traded decision maker, board member, or significant equity owner or family member, they have to disclose every single trade they make. And it's usually disclosed within 24 to 48 hours. And you'll see that. So for example, the chief medical officer of Madrigal Pharmaceuticals was selling, right? And it's interesting because it's like an involuntary sell, right? So it's telling you it's a forced liquidation, or forced sell, or forced distribution. So that potentially is not as powerful as the chief information officer, for example, for Red Violet selling, right? Now, how much do they, what's their net impact to their equity position? It's showing you it's minus 3%, right? You can look at their chief financial officers also selling. So that's interesting. So I'd have to examine this a little further, but it's the same opportunity. If you want to trade these, you just click trade, and then you'll immediately be able to execute them. And it's as simple as saying, oh, I want to buy $1,000 worth of, or let's say $800 worth of. You can do fractional shares. You can scale in, scale out. You can be as sophisticated as you want. You could say, I want to buy at this particular asset is at $59, so I want to buy at 58. I want to buy at 56 and 55. And then I want to buy 75 and 10 and 15. So you can scale in, and then you can scale out too. So if you're going along, then you can do it that way. And then it'll scale out exactly to the quantity that you want. Or you can distribute over time just through purchases across tranches. So you say, I want to buy over the course of the next 5 hours, and I'm willing to accept up to a slippage threshold of 0.22%. Or you can say, I can schedule it on a future date and time. And you can then, like I mentioned, you can say, I want to go and execute it across multiple accounts. And I want to buy it on Charles Schwab. I want to buy it on Alpaca. And I want to be able to execute it all at the same time. And you can also do smart routing, which is executing it on-chain or off-chain. And then you go and you're long. And then when you go long, of course, the market's closed now. But if you want to go long, it'll go and queue it up for it to be executed tomorrow morning at 9:30. So that's insider alpha. And there's so much more. You can look at top insiders. You can look at sector flows. You can look at individualized statistical clusters of assets that are being bought. You could look at the cross-section again of where insiders are selling alongside politicians who are also selling, or vice versa. You can see where insiders are buying while politicians are buying at the same time, and you can do cross-flock analysis. There's so much that you can do. You can track 10% owners, discretionary purchases, planned liquidations, transfers, Congress selling or buying, squeeze setups only. So that could also be interesting, where you have the rising short interest is spiking up, and that's potentially going to lead to a squeeze. You can identify those assets as well alongside involuntary taxes. There's so much that you can do within the insider alpha. And then, so those are really the 5 main core trading applications that are within Blockcircle that allow you at the simple click of a button to immediately execute any trade you want. So there's nothing like this on the market. There's nothing even remotely close that allows you to have a unified on-chain, off-chain interface to execute simple all the way to advanced conditional orders. So, but yeah, that's my main overview. I hope you find it helpful. If you have questions, please ask.